Coming up this week on this Lifestyle Show, Richard's back from his travels, Garry is here, and we've got lots to talk about. We'll be talking about the new Surface Go 4, which I've got here. Find out how I'm getting on with that. We'll be talking about the new Raspberry Pi 5, which sounds really interesting. Richard's got all the details on that. We've got new builds of Windows 11 to talk about. We'll be talking about some Synth Fest coming up soon, and we're going to that and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and to Garry. Richard, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yes, back in the country of your trips away. So, you've been east and west.
Yes, indeed. I went to the US, to North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, all around Virginia, I think all around there, for a thing called Drag Week, which is a thing where sort of street legal drag racing cars have to drive from track to track over the course of a week, which means they've got to cover about 1,000 miles or so, which is brilliant. It was really good fun. It was really good fun seeing the creativity of the people involved, because of course you can't have a whole pit crew. It's not like Formula One or whatever. You had to basically run what you brung, and it was great fun. Really, I'd recommend it if you get a chance to go and watch these races and then see them going from place to place. It was superb. And then after that, I went to the Cloud Native Computing Conference, the KubeCon in Shanghai, which also was an experience as well.
I can imagine lots of clouds there.
Yes, there were a lot of clouds. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you see? Was anything interesting on the cloud computing side of it?
No, not really. I mean, I think, to be honest, the KubeCon Shanghai thing was more the Cloud Native Computing Foundation saying, look, here we are, because of course there is a challenge with operating in China, because you've got the restrictions there. I mean, you got to bear in mind that Kubernetes itself was a Google project, and of course Google's banned in China. You can't use any Google services. So it was actually more interesting to see how they cope with development teams that spread out in different countries. Because you've got the time zone issue, obviously, but you also have you have to all use the same services, and they can't all be the same. So I did find that very interesting, but there weren't any specific announcements there. I think Kubernetes is kind of it's matured to the point now where it's just a standard thing.
Yeah, which is really what we talked last week on the show about Microsoft's event, and things have kind of matured and got to the point where these events now, even you had the new iPhone as well, didn't you? They're not bringing out something brand new that you've never seen before, whether it be hardware or software. Now we're seeing just the usual, iteration and features.
Well, this is true, but at least we are spared the shots of Panos Panay's family.
Yes, and no one was pumped at all for the Microsoft event.
There was no pump. No, there was no Duo or Neo being.
Yeah, and of course Panos since, I mean, we talked about it last week with Garry,
exactly,
but Panos has now confirmed has gone to Amazon, so we're going to be pumped for his devices, and I imagine there are a lot of people, and here's Garry now. I imagine a lot of people hoping for a dual screen Kindle at some point. Good evening, Garry.
Good evening. Live from a charger near you. Well, not near you, actually.
Richard's back, so we're just talking. We talked about his trip, so we're just talking about that Panos Panay has been confirmed at Amazon as was it, head of product devices, or I can't remember.
Product development or something anyway. Basically in charge of the Alexa division.
Yeah, so we're going to see. So the first thing we'll see is a dual screen Kindle. And a Neo-based Amazon tablet.
Yeah, I mean,
it would not surprise me,
isn't it? I mean, it's an interesting move, because, I mean, it's not been a division that's been an astonishing success for Amazon, has it? Let's face it. So I'll be interested to see what Panos does there. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I think we'll hope to see some interesting new devices, but so there wasn't a huge amount of Microsoft. But what there was the Surface Go 4.
Is it ARM-based?
It's not ARM-based. What a surprise! We'll come back to. We'll ask you about that in a minute. But actually, so did you see this, Richard? Where they didn't even announce it. It just kind of snuck out.
I must admit, I actually skipped the whole presentation.
Well, you didn't miss anything.
Because it didn't look very exciting. And of course, I mean, while I may have my issues with Panos Panay and and the Windows team, he did always put on a good show, and I thought this is going to be a presentation. So
yeah, well, they didn't even mention this new Surface Go in the presentation. It was just included in the press release.
yeah,
So as I mentioned last week, if you go onto the Microsoft Store as a consumer and look for the services, you won't find the Surface Go 4. You'll find the Surface Go 3 with LTE, but not the Surface Go 4. If you go on the business side and go through there, you will find the Surface Go 4 with no LTE option. So this is the Surface Go 4, but the difference is with this is the Surface Go 4 for business, which means it actually comes with Windows 11 Pro, which I completely missed when I first looked at it last week, and I sort of went through all my usual setups, and someone said, it comes with Windows Pro, do you know? Oh, yeah, it does. So I think it is roughly 50 quid dearer than the 3, and there's your Pro license. So I think
how much RAM has he got?
This one's got 8.
Okay.
The minimum is now 8. The small, I think there's 8 and 16, and the drives are 64, 128, and 256.
Is a 64 an actual proper SSD now, or is it still?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a proper drive on there as well. So that's the one I've got here. This is the 64 8 gig one with the N200 processor.
How is it?
And actually, it's really quick for this kind of device. So I did the Geekbench scores, and it's a lot quicker than the Surface Go 3. I obviously don't have a Go 3, but I've got my original Go here, and it's way quicker. I mean, just opening Edge or rebooting or whatever, this is done. The original one is still thinking about it, which you'd expect for 2018 to now, wouldn't you? But it is a lot quicker. So I did the Geekbench scores and posted those today because loads of people. I didn't really think it would matter that much, but it obviously does to a lot of people because this isn't a consumer, there's not many people got these. So a lot of people have been asking me, can I share this, how does this last, and how quick is it to open this and whatever. So so I did do the Geekbench score, and I've got it on the screen. You can see it's a bit faster than the Surface Go 3 of single core, but for multi-core it's a lot faster. And you can feel that snappiness to it. It does feel nice and quick. What I haven't done is really figured out how much battery life it's got yet, because I charged it up last week when I unboxed it. I haven't charged it since. I've plugged it in a couple of times while I've been doing a bit of work, so it's kind of charged up a little bit. But yeah, the battery is 80%, and I haven't fully charged it yet. But it's hard to say on a new device. You really need to. I need to use it until it goes flat, and then I'll get a good idea, be able to get a good idea of the battery life. But I think on and off browsing, that kind of thing, it's taking like 5% for a few hours or something like that. It's not really quantifiable yet. So I think what I need to do is just leave it on. But yeah, I've been playing with it and using it. Yeah, I found it quick. It's responsive. I mean, my use case is, as I mentioned before, I use this at the night for doing a bit of browsing, and I use it for meetings with OneNote and that's exactly, it's great for that.
But it's almost slipped out without fanfare.
So I say that again?
It's almost slipped out without any fanfare whatsoever.
It certainly has, yeah. And it just seems a bit of a weird thing that, if a consumer goes on the site, they'll be buying a Surface Go 3, which is the older spec, for almost the same money. Which maybe they've got a lot of Surface Go 3s to sell. Yeah, but I think it's
quite possibly.
Yeah, and I think this is that they make a big deal, and I've got a video of it if you want to look at that. But they make a big deal of this on the site as being for frontline workers, which it would be good for that. So although it's got no LTE connectivity, so you can't put a SIM card in it, so you've got to tether it from your phone. But yeah, it does make a good device. Maybe form filling on the go or a bespoke application, line of business applications. It would be good for that. But I really like it. Browsing at night, use it in landscape mode. in portrait mode. You know, it works great. So yeah, we know Windows and tablet restrictions, but I'm well used to that now. I had to get a new keyboard as well because my old keyboard doesn't work anymore. So it's not the fact that keyboards aren't interchangeable; it's just the fact my old one didn't work anymore. So yeah. So anyway, I've got it there, got it running. It's really nice. So I'm going to do a video of the comparison with the Surface Go because lots of people ask me about that as well.
It is, but you'd be right. It's very strange that consumers are. I mean, everyone by business is directed to Surface Go 3. The Surface Go 4 isn't even mentioned. It's really I mean, I know we've joked about them perhaps having stuff to sell, but I mean, I don't understand why they would do this. It seems very strange because I mean, even Apple will sell the M1 MacBook Air alongside the M2 MacBook Air. So quite why Microsoft are hiding the Surface Go 4 in this way seems very strange.
Yeah, and I had loads of people because I did put about it a few times, a few comments, and loads of people kind of saying to me, "Oh, I'd buy one if you could." Well, you can. you just have to go to the Surface Go for Business page, and then when it says where to buy, you choose Microsoft as your supplier, and you can buy it. You don't need a business account. You can just buy it. You know, there's no. It's just very strange.
That's really strange.
Yeah,
that's it. I think the theory about clearing out stuff is probably right. I don't know. One thing I have learned there Ian, is that the advertising algorithm on your site really knows you so well. You obviously are very keen on polyphonic aftertouch.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, yeah, it does know me very well. Yeah. Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know why they've done it that way. It's perfectly good for business. So for personal use as well. And I think, like I said last week, as far as I knew, that the Surface Go was one of the better selling devices because it's cheap or cheaper. So I really like it. And like I said, a few people said to me, "Oh, I would buy one if they sold them." And yeah, they do. You just have to click 3 different links instead of one link. I don't know what difference it makes to. I speculated with Gary last week, maybe it's support, but I still got it from Microsoft. So what's the difference? I really don't know. Apart from the Pro license, but then why not just sell the Surface Go for consumers, Surface Go for consumers without Pro, and then have the Pro one on the business side?
Well, I guess they then have to do 2 lots of packaging and all that sort of stuff. So and maybe they haven't printed the packaging yet for the consumer version because that's obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a boring old. I think you saw it on the site before. It's in a boring old brown box. That's the first thing I noticed. Actually, yeah.
I did hear. Well, I did hear a rumor that Panos used to have to sign off on all the packaging. So I don't know how true that was, but maybe he wasn't able to sign off on the packaging because nobody's prepared to sign off the packaging yet.
Yeah. So it's really strange, but anyway, like I said, I've been waiting a long while to get this. So I'm really pleased because I've got some travels booked, and I like to travel with the Go. It's an excellent device. It's because it unlike just taking a tablet or whatever, an iPad, I can do anything on there that I need to. So yeah, things might be slower, but I've got access to all the tools that I need. So yeah, it's a really nice device, and it makes a nice companion to a bigger device like the Surface Laptop Studio, which I've got. Which of course they've launched a new one of those as well, but I won't be getting one of those because they are really expensive. And yes, I know there's a nice spec button, but not something I need at the moment. And I tell you, I've got the whatever it's currently called, the 2023 update on there as well. So I've got the Copilot and all the AI stuff in there. It's very exciting. We did get a new build. In fact, as we actually got the release proper, didn't we, of the update last week?
Isn't it? It's the September update, and I think you've got to choose to have it. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I did. Yeah, you've got to click on the button to get updates as soon as they're available. If you don't, you're going to get it at the end of October, beginning of November, aren't you?
Yeah. So it's I mean, has your I'm not running it here, but has your about been updated to 23H2, or does it still say 22?
It still says 22H2. You only get the 23H2 on beta, dev, and Canary. So release preview and what will be the release one still say 22H2. It's quite interesting because effectively what they just moved all the features out and put them into 22H2, which again is a bit of a strange one. I mean, Gary speculated last week, is it because they can push things like Copilot out immediately, whereas if it was tied to 23H2, businesses could postpone that build?
Yeah, I mean, but Copilot is also not rolling out everywhere, is it? It's only going to a few regions.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that perhaps doesn't make
And for what I've seen so far, it looks a bit barking mad as well. So I've seen some conversations that people have had with it, which are interesting to say the least. Maybe yearn for Cortana.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with it is how little it can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think had it had time to be baked into the OS a bit more, then it would be great. But if I were to change into dark mode now, I can just go settings dark, appearance dark mode. Whereas if I go to Copilot and ask it to change to dark mode, it's going to take twice as long to type that in, unless everything is available and you're constantly in the chat window. So I guess that they'll perhaps pick a few things to go into that, and maybe the next version of Windows, whether it's 24H2 or Windows 12 or whatever, it will have way more stuff and sort of baked into it. Because if you live in that operating, if you live it and you're using it all the time, then it makes sense for it to change to dark mode or light mode or take a screenshot if you've kind of got it open all the time. But if you occasionally use it, it's not worth it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I understand if you're asking actual questions, but saying things like take a screenshot, that's just nonsensical, because print screen does that, that's fine, or does that. And I think it just seems to be putting stuff in for the sake of it. I mean, dark mode maybe, because not everyone's going to know where that is, but screenshot, I think everyone knows how to take a screenshot without having to ask Copilot.
Yeah, so I think once everything is in there, and maybe as a new user, you don't know how to do everything in Windows, so you don't know how to change maybe your default display or whatever. And if everything's available and it can point you in the right direction, then people would just use that as the default. It's a bit like going command line to GUI, isn't it? If you know the command lines, then when you in the DOS days, it was way easier doing that than trying to do it other ways. But again, over time, you just get used to the new way of doing it, and you're not in the command line all the time. And in many respects, I still find command line a bit quicker for some tasks, and this is kind of the next
for sure
version of that. Yeah,
it's almost like Microsoft Bob made real again.
Yeah. It, and the little dog and Merlin the wizard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What were they called then? Microsoft
assistants? No, I don't know. They're wizards. I don't know what they were.
Yeah. Gary's programmed some of them, I'm sure.
I can't think what they were called. Actually.
The worst thing is I can remember the API for programming the avatar with the wizards or whatever it's called, but I can't remember what they're actually called now. After they were unceremoniously axed and dropped.
Yeah, there was dog and there was a wizard, and there was another one, wasn't there?
Yeah, obviously there was Clippy. I think.
Yeah,
Clippy,
of course there's Clippy. Yeah.
I think Clippy was part of all that. Yeah. But I mean, I remember the dog and the wizard. I mean, obviously the dog was initially quite cartoony, and then they went for 3D graphics after that. I think because the wizard was more of a 3D thing, whereas the dog was initially a 2D cartoon and then moved to 3D in XP. I can't believe I remember this. What have I forgotten that I remember this? This is awful.
Yeah, so cutting edge Windows news there.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going back. Yeah. We see this. This is it. I mean, I'm reminded of all those tools by looking at Copilot. Except Copilot just seems to be fantastically underwhelming compared to what you could do before. And I will go back to Cortana, which could do a lot more stuff, I think, than Copilot does. I don't understand why Microsoft appears to have almost stepped backwards. I understand that maybe in a year's time it might be more full featured, but right now it feels they've removed something that was actually quite good had it been developed further, and then shoehorned this AI tool in there, which, I mean, if you try and use it, you can make it do some laughable things.
Yeah. So we'll see what Microsoft put into these new builds, but like we had a new build this week at Dev Channel build, and there was literally nothing in it.
I mean, do you think we're seeing the slow death of the Insider program, because it is pretty bad right now, isn't it?
I wonder whether they've definitely gone back to doing things under the covers, haven't they? Like they used to do. We saw it with Windows 11. We more or less got the first hands-on version when it was complete. It's perhaps a bit different because Windows 11 was kind of built on top of Windows 10. But so yeah, I mean, it was 9 years ago this week, wasn't it, that the Insider program was launched?
Yeah,
and it was a big deal then, wasn't it?
It was a big deal. It really was. Whereas now it just seems to be kind of death by 1,000 sort of cuts and tinkerings and things. We have this canary channel, which, I mean, I've just not seen anything particularly interesting there. I mean, again, I'd have to defer to Garry in case there's things happening under the hood that I'm not aware of. But right now, it's a case of it's just, it's almost more interesting to see things being delivered to the production version in preview.
Yeah, I mean, the Canary version is virtually all under the hood stuff at the moment. I can't say anything particularly excites me under the hood at the moment. Previous versions, there has been stuff. One thing I do wonder about this whole sort of secrecy and not releasing stuff. I wonder if Panos leaving will actually affect that, because I know that was one of his things, that he didn't like things being spoken about until they were ready to speak about them. So you kind of could see that changing potentially, depending how the structure works out with the new people in charge. But yeah, it definitely does seem to be going back to the point where you don't really learn anything through being an insider, which is a shame.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, maybe there will be a change. That maybe we'll see something different. But I remember when a build came out, it was newsworthy. I mean, not newsworthy as it's not going to be on the BBC News, but it was within our community. It was newsworthy, and I would do a video, and it would get thousands of views. And last one is into the hundreds, and there's a few there was no point in doing a build video last week because there was literally nothing to show. So it has descended. It's actually become almost, you're right, Richard, death by 1,000 cuts.
I mean, I do wonder if it's if we're seeing in its death throes. Although then again, as Garry says, with Panos going, maybe things are going to change. Who knows?
Yeah, and there still is some relevance because they still want the feedback. It's just us greedy people wanting shiny new things. It's not as good. I mean, we had sets and things like that, which was great to see stuff be tried. It didn't make it into production, but it was still great to try stuff. So hopefully it will get back to bit in that. And I know that for Microsoft, it's still important because they do like the feedback, and we've had people on the show talking about how they use the feedback. So that side of it's good. And I'm running insider builds on most of my machines apart from the main one, so I can push the feedback too when I see the issues. It's just not as exciting for us enthusiasts. And initially the program was launched for enthusiasts, wasn't it? Now it's more a bit of validation, I suppose, for a feature. But the risk Microsoft run is they don't make it exciting. People won't install the builds, and if people don't install the builds, they don't get the feedback. So,
well, exactly. I mean, I think we'd say the A/B testing has been particularly annoying for insiders, because when you sign up to be an insider, you want to test stuff. That's why you're doing it. And so they say, oh yeah, but some of you won't get this stuff, and all that's and has caused various third-party tools to happen, which allow you to turn on the A or B testing. So
yeah,
I mean, we'll see. I guess it's going to be a time of change and transition at Microsoft. I mean, again, you touched on it in recent shows when in the departure of Panos Panay was quite abrupt. I didn't see it coming. I don't know about you.
No.
So we're obviously in for a time of change going forward, which could be good, or it could be a relentless refocusing on enterprise, because that's where all the money is.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and the most exciting hardware that we've got to talk about for a while. For me, most views and things like that I've had is for this, which is a business device, which I'm kind of running as a consumer device. So yeah, that probably points in the right direction. The only other thing that seems to generate as much interest is the Behringer Selena string ensemble, which so I'm pleased that I've got both ends of the spectrum there. Now, is there talk about things new? Was this a new Raspberry Pi on the way?
Yes, there is the Raspberry Pi 5 I can talk about. Yes, this. I mean, it's not due to actually hit, I think, until later this month. But certainly, there's been some review samples around which I have one, and I can confirm it's really quick. I mean, it's really fast. They've really upped the clock speed now. I think it's does it go? It's 2.4 gigahertz. I think it goes now. It's still sort of ARM Cortex A76, which I think they dropped the manufacturing process and they're now down at, I think, 16 nanometer, which is a fairly chunky drop. So it was explained to me that it can now do more, basically, with the same energy that it could do before. So I've been told that it shouldn't get as hot, although in my testing it gets really hot.
That's certainly what I've been hearing. It gets really hot.
To the point where it will freeze up. I've had 2 occasions where it's frozen up. When I fitted the fan, it's been fine, but without the fan, I've noticed it doesn't throttle in the way that the Pi 4 did. It actually stops. So if you're looking at one, I would strongly advise you to look at a cooling solution as well. That aside, it's really good. Comes in 4 gig or 8 gig versions. They've increased the price a bit by about $5. And again, you should factor in I would suggest an active cooling solution. They do some quite neat ones. It's got they've increased the speed of the video. They've adopted a faster storage standard for micro SD storage, and I'm told that they plan to go even further. So all told, it's a really quick machine. I've been using it as my daily driver for a few days now, and yeah, it works really well. It's even got a PC. I mean, it hasn't got a PCI Express slot, but it supports PCI Express 2. Although you do a separate adapter to actually plug any devices, and it's got a real-time clock, although you need an external battery to power it. So it's a really useful bit of kit. I think some people will be very upset to see the composite jack has now gone, because it's got 2 lanes of it's got dual lanes for the camera, which means space on which means there's no space on the board now for the composite jack, which is a shame. Although there are 2 pads which you can use for composite out. And again, audio jack is, the only way of getting audio out of it now is via Bluetooth or USB or via headers. So again, there are some things missing from it, and won't cause me a problem. But I do know a lot of people are quite unhappy about the composite video jack going away, and it is a shame, to be honest.
But the Raspberry Pi 400 didn't have that. I'm just looking at mine now. I don't think I had those extra. Yeah, my Raspberry Pi 400.
400, the 4 did. The 4 definitely did.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the 4 here, but yeah.
And there could well be I believe there could well be a 500 come along.
Makes sense,
because this would make sense once I think they've sorted out the heating, because it does get hot. I mean, I was told by the team, by the Pi team, that they thought they'd figured out the heating thing and it would be cooler. That's not been my experience. I found it gets quite hot. So if you want all that performance, be prepared for the fact you're going to have to think about a cooling solution, which I think is a shame, because they don't sell it with a cooling solution built into it. And I think it's at the point now where they probably need to do that, because I can see what could happen is people might buy this and use it and then think it's not working properly because it's, it has issues when it gets hot. It is a shame, because if you are cooling it correctly, then it really does fly. And it's a very impressive bit of kit. It really is. It's the price has gone up. It's a shame. Needs cooling, a shame. But it is definitely, the hype is true. It does go quickly.
Yeah. It looks nice as well. From nice and neat as well. You've just got the 2 HDMI ports. I do find those HDMI ports a bit annoying having to use that adapter, but I understand why they do it, because they're smaller.
Exactly, it's purely
So,
space.
what's the target audience for this, do you think, Richard? Because this is something which
Well,
kept
this
coming up.
is the question exactly. I mean, but the increase in price has elevated it, I think, away from impulse buyers. I think that happened with the 4 to a certain extent, but because there were so many issues with getting hold of the 4s, it wasn't felt quite so much. I think the stocks, the supply chain has been more or less resolved. So there's more around. Target audience is a really good question, Gary. You're not going to buy one of these just because you fancy it, because it costs about $80 for the 8 gig version. So you've almost moved it away from sort of casual hobbyists who might have 2 or 3 lurking around, because it's quite an investment now. Probably a bit expensive for schools, for education. I can see business liking it a lot. I can see. I mean, and they are planning to do the compute module version next year, so I can see there being definitely some scope for business. But yeah, I am concerned that the price increase might have elevated it beyond the impulse purchase that the Pi always was, because when the Pi began, it was almost a fire and forget. You could buy it and forget about it. You know, whereas this, you have to think about the purchase. It's much more of a financial consideration now. So yeah, I would say it's still fairly aimed squarely at enthusiasts. Running Linux, for example, is a much nicer experience on it now. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when people try and get Windows 11 on it. I know that the issues, I gather, are around the DirectX drivers, but since Microsoft has put a lot of effort into ARM and Vulkan, should work better. Hopefully, it should be easier to do, but we'll see what happens. So maybe we'll see some lightweight Windows on ARM devices that don't cost a fortune. You never know.
Well, that'd be good. That could be good. I mean, I certainly people I've been talking to in the smart home market feel it's almost a bit over-spec what we want.
I think using it. Yeah, I think you're using it as a smart IoT device. It's hugely over-spec. I mean, even the Pi 4 was almost over-spec for that.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, we get the older ones anyway. But yeah, and there was also this feeling that, I mean, I agree, it's a great device. I think there's a feeling it has moved away from its roots, and obviously Pi Foundation is charitable foundation. It's supposed to be aim is to get these things out to education, and you can argue against it there and back on that. I mean, certainly as a desktop replacement, this is good, because you would obviously have a cooling solution for that. But yeah, I do worry they're going a bit too powerful with it.
I mean, I can certainly see. I mean, I'd certainly agree. It is overkill for that sort of thing. But I mean, I think in terms of education, the advent of things like the microbit. I mean, I think that's kind of almost a more popular option. And in actual fact, I've seen a number of educators going down the path of running simulators and things. So they'll have a Chromebook or Windows machine, and then run a simulator. So I can't see this device itself being that much good for that purpose. It is more like a very inexpensive desktop or general purpose computer now. But I'd be interested to see what the compute module is like. But I would say what would really rule it out, and even the Pi 4 to a certain extent, from home, and from being a smart home device, is the fact it does pump out a lot of heat, and that I think is an issue.
Yeah, because you want those quiet and passive, and
you do.
Not needed. You definitely don't want a fan on them or anything like that. So yeah, it's a different. I think there is a market for some of the interfaces that this model has, but on a lower spec version. I think that would go down one of the smart home market. So 2 HDMI ports can be useful. Some of the connectivity would be useful without the necessary the processor speed.
Yeah, I mean,
but having said that, that's achieved because some of these extra bits they have are down to the fact they have got high processor speed and they have got
exactly yes.
The chips.
And I think there's more to come from their chipset, but the price does worry me, as does the heat. It does. I mean, you shouldn't understand how hot this thing gets, which is not something which I saw initially in reviews and things, but I think people as they're using it more and more, going, oh, it just gets really hot actually.
Yeah, it's definitely the one comment I've had from a lot of people is it gets really hot and seemingly hotter than the 4 did, which, considering they put so much effort into it, does seem a shame.
I mean, exactly this. I mean, I wonder if there's some manufacturing fault or something, because certainly in my sample it gets hot, and I was told that it shouldn't be as hot as the 4 was, and it's like, well, the 4 was pretty hot. This is even hotter, and whereas the 4 would throttle backwards, this simply freezes. It doesn't work. But again, I'll cut it some slack because it's a manufacturing sample. It's not it's not production sample.
Yeah. These are pre-release samples, so there's always room for tweaks, and
exactly.
As you said, it's not coming out exactly yet.
So and I have given the Pi team my feedback saying it does get hot and it has frozen up twice. So it sounds as though they're getting that feedback from other people as well, which is good. Again, I should point out, put a fan on it or a decent cooler, it's fine, it's brilliant, perfect.
Yeah.
But if you're planning to use it as just a smart home device, this is not good for that. You although arguably you want to be using a Pi 3 really for that anyway. So.
Interesting. When I was scrolling down, I noticed they have an M2 hat on there as well.
The M2 hat. That's I think you'd basically use that for the PCI 2 and 2 interface.
Yeah, but that's what I think on. I've got my Windows installation is on an M2 drive that I've plugged into an M2 to USB 3, so it plugs into via the USB 3 port. But actually, you could plug it natively into that, and that's going to be a lot faster, isn't it? So that's going to give you really fast write speed, which is great for Windows.
It will be a lot faster. Although, again, it's going to sound ridiculous, but obviously, if you plonk a massive great cooler and fan on it, you've got to also consider how it's going to work with the with hats, because of course,
that's right.
The hat a hat it may not fit, or it might obscure the fan, and you need to have some kind of cooling solution on this device. So that's another interesting thing to see how that's going to work. I mean, it's early days. As I say, I'm very impressed with the hardware up to now. I think Garry has articulated the potential pitfalls very well in terms of who is this really for. It's for me. It works really well. But equally, I mean, you've got the shot of the hat there, but you'll notice on that shot you're showing there's no cooler, and I wouldn't want to run this without a cooler.
Yeah, and with the M2 drives, because they get quite hot, don't they? Those
drives, it's which is unfortunate, because one of the great things about earlier Pis is, of course, you didn't need to think about cooling. It was just fine. Whereas now you are going to think about it, and even the Pi 400, that's got a massive heatsink in there as well. So if you open it up and look inside, it's got there's a lot of metal. There's a lot of metal in there. Sort of that way.
Yeah. It looks great. And I think if I've tried a couple of ideas of building like a dedicated synthesizer using one of these. But I've always come a bit unstuck on the hardware side of the audio drivers on Linux. So it's a bit tricky then. So because you need a USB interface. And so you can't just, I think you need to find a class compliant USB interface that works under Linux, and then and then you've got to find a Linux virtual software. So it's a bit tricky really, because of course what I was thinking initially was the Korg synthesizer, which I've got over there, there's a native version that runs under Windows, which is brilliant. And I thought, well, maybe I could, you could build a dedicated one of that, but of course you can't, because they don't have a Linux version of the software, even though it runs. I'm guessing it's running under Linux on the dedicated, the hardware one. But yeah, you can't download. There's only Mac or Windows versions of the software, and they're Intel only. So I did try and install it on the Pi 400, but it detects the ARM processor and won't do it. So yeah, so I kind of have a limited. I think it should be possible, but it's probably a bit too much. But what I really wanted to do was just get one of the off-the-shelf software synths and build a dedicated software synth. Not that I really need to, but it's one of those things of just, you don't necessarily need to, but it'd be good to do it. So, because that's the thing now, I suppose, with the Pi like you said, when it was really cheap, you could kind of just buy one to have it here, just to see what you could do with it. When it's getting more now, you could really need a reason for getting one of them.
Yeah, definitely, exactly.
Yeah.
Because as I say, it's $60 for the 4 gig and 80 for the 8 gig, I think, if memory serves correctly. Again, what was interesting is the board itself has got giant jumpers for 1, 2, 4, or 8 gigs. So
yeah, it certainly looks. It looks
there's
good device.
and there's a fan just there, which I'm using now.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of wanted to get, that was the whole point. It does kind of defeat the purpose a little bit. That was, you didn't worry about that in the early days with the first one, but I've still got, when it comes to Christmas, I use mine for doing Christmas decoration software and the lights, controlling lights and things like that. So, and I've got my 400 here, which runs Windows, I've got Linux on the micro SD card and Windows on the SSD. So it works really well for that. So yeah, I just need to find some. It's great for playing about with. If I want to do any playing about with Linux, I always just fire that up because it's a great way of.
As do I. I've got a 400 here as well. As I said, I'm looking forward to. I mean, I'm pretty sure next year that they'll do a 500 or call it along those lines, and it'll be an 8 gig machine, which would be great. But again, it'll be more expensive, and I do worry that they're elevating the cost away from its roots, really.
Yeah, and interesting to see what the compute module people do with the compute module. As I mentioned, the synthesizer I've got here has got a compute module in it, and if the new one comes out, will they be able to do more complex synthesizer designs, or more perhaps devices that have got offer more power or whatever, multi-timbral and that kind of thing, so they'll be able to do that with those, or just interesting what other people make with those, what projects that come out of them.
For sure, yeah, and yes, again, we'll have to see it as things move into production. What happens with the cooling? Because I'd say right now, the big Achilles heel with this device is the fact it does get hot, and they keep saying things like it runs cool on the floor. And it's like, I don't know, it's really hot.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, if you're designing something with a compute module, you don't want to add the fan. So
no, exactly. I mean, you would need to have some kind of big old heatsink. And I was actually talking to a friend who worked for a certain space agency that flies Pi devices on the space station, and they were looking very carefully at the issue of heat, because it is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it has been a success story, the Pi, and it continues to do well. Yeah. And designed and manufactured in the UK now.
Absolutely. And again, if you want something that's the Pi 3 is still available, and for an awful lot of BPE people, the Pi 0 is more than adequate for playing.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, they can offer the different devices, so you've got the range going up. If you need the power, you can go with this, and you've got the option of the lower spec ones as well. What else did I have to talk about this week? On my music stuff, I did have another video on the synthesizer. Actually, we were talking the one that is Raspberry Pi powered. We're talking about. I've done a sort of how to program video, so I think I talked about this last week, but that's available, and I've just recorded over the weekend part 2 of that one. So that should be up this week as well. So if you wanted to get into doing your own sound design on this synth, it's a great synth for tinkering around. And talking of that as well, this weekend is Synthfest in Sheffield. So that's the synthesizer electronic music get together over at Sheffield at it's at the Octagon, the University of Sheffield's place there. If you go to Synthfest, if you just search for Synthfest UK, you can find all the details if you want to go. We talked about it on the show. with the organisers of the show a couple of weeks ago. So check out that. I'll include a link for in the show notes for that one. But I'm really looking forward to it. It was a good show. I enjoyed it last year, and me and son's going, so we're going to be. I'm not going to be buying anything while I'm there, honestly.
honestly.
Yeah, honestly. Interesting, actually. Yamaha. I believe Yamaha. It's not announced yet, but I've seen the rumours that Yamaha UK might be announcing a new synthesizer there, which is nice for them to have. I think a couple of manufacturers did it in previous years as well, so it's nice for them to have a product launch, at the event. A big, company like Yamaha will choose their event. So yeah, it reminds me almost of the CES days where people actually took things there and there was new things to see. So hopefully I'll get to see some new thing. But I'm mainly there to go play with all the new toys, and I'd definitely not buy anything new. I have no space. I've already mentioned this, but I have no space. So that's why software synthesizers are good. They don't take any space up, but there's nothing like the real thing to getting your hands on it. But there's a lot of good stuff there. So anyway, so if anybody's interested, I'll be there on Saturday. Saturday, 7th of October it is, and it's well worth having it's just great to go to a community event like that with a real hands-on event. Right, was there anything else you wanted to go through this week?
Just on one thing on the EV pop side of things. There was a bit hidden away in the government's new document about supporting drivers and vehicles and whatever the politically they want to do this week. There's an interesting bit about chargers. So home charging. So up to now, you've only been able to get any support for installing a home charger if you have off-road parking. But hidden away in there's a bit about extending that support for cross-drive or cross-pathway charging. So right. There's a few solutions now out there which are likely to be approved by several councils for installation across pathways. And it looks like the government are actually going to support that with funding as well, and also look at into the planning regs and maybe actually having a pre-approved set of solutions for this, which would be great, because I think one of the problems with people who haven't got off-road parking, on-street parking, is that if you want to do this, quite a few people just drape cables across pathways, or they hang them in midair, and that's not particularly safe and not particularly pedestrian friendly. And there are some great solutions out there. I've met a few of them over the years. The first one I came across was a thing called Gully, which basically is a gully you put in across the pathway, and you can run a charging cable through it. But there's a lot of other solutions as well out there, and some really good ones being thought through, which solve all the problems of pedestrian safety, etc., and are fitting into the normal sort of run of the mill type infrastructure that the councils use for pathways and the like. So yeah, it's good to see that that's coming, because I think that is definitely one of the sticking points for people who haven't got off-road parking, that they're actually charging that way. And there's some other bits in there about easing the planning regulations for installing proper high-speed chargers, and trying to improve access to the electricity grid for those chargers as well, and maybe get rid of some of this paperwork we keep talking about on the show, which delays these chargers being installed. But we will see. Devil's always in the detail.
Yeah, I guess the off-road bit, or on-road parking is the main issue, isn't it? Because even a lot of families, like I have now, my son's got a car, so he's got 3 cars to park outside. So if you were trying to juggle parking 3 cars and cables and everything else, you've got to have a good solution in place.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming up with the regulation is good on that. And as we talked about last week, and with the potential changes, but they've not announced anything as such, are they, on that?
Oh well, there is one thing which did come out is the rules and regs for the manufacturing company. So they have slightly tweaked them. I don't have the figures exactly in front of me. I think it's something like that 80% of all new vehicles have to be battery electric vehicles by 2030 now on sale, which means basically the car companies are actually probably likely to sell battery electric vehicles, because that's the only way they're going to force people to go down to sell that many, and they get fined if they don't sell that percentage.
Mhm.
So there's a real incentive for them. This is why Ford was so much up and down about this change of the dates, because they were still being forced to produce them, but they're being told that people wouldn't buy them. So yeah, I think that's come out in the last week. So I mean, and when you start looking at the detail of that, very little has changed, to be fair, in terms of what actually really was going ahead. So yeah. And it's interesting. We've had a couple of fairly large manufacturers talk about the fact that they are still going fully battery electric by 2030. Honda being one of the big names who've said that, and not selling petrol diesel vehicles. But as I said on many occasions, that doesn't mean people can't still buy petrol and diesel cars, because they can. They can certainly buy second hand. They can continue to run the ones they've got. It's not an outright ban. So, yeah, lot of false statements being made along that line.
Well, yes, I think it's I think building any hype about it one way or the other is a bit of a political battleground, isn't it, at the moment?
It is, yeah.
To election,
I have to be very careful. Yeah, very careful on that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, really, because it doesn't need politicising. It should just be, what's best for us. But these things have a habit of doing that, especially in these times when up to elections and things like that. Everything gets politicised, and people go. It's like that episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, isn't it? Like thick limes, thin limes. People get very hot over issues when really you should just take it on, on the facts. But we know facts don't always come to all debates, not for a while anyway. Well, that's a good update. So, Richard, anything else from you for this week?
That's it for me. Thanks. I'm going to go back to playing with my Pi 5.
Oh, that sounds good. So, what are you going to do with that? Yeah, Rich. What you other than just desktop type stuff? What you actually running with it?
I'm going to try and see if I can get some emulators working.
Oh, and have you still got? Was it your tube map project? How did you get on with that?
Oh, that. Actually pretty good in the end. I was doing two projects. One was the tube map, or more of a railway map, which is that was okay. I was also trying to render Doom on the wall using basically LED lights per pixel, and I very quickly ran into some problems around addressing every pixel, unfortunately, which I had to start spending a lot of money, and I decided I didn't want to spend any more money on that, so I backed away from it in a big hurry. That was actually probably a more interesting project, because I took the open source Doom engine and began rewriting the rasterizer bit, so it would basically treat the a matrix of LEDs as effectively a big raster matrix, a 320 by 200 matrix, which is it was a really interesting process. As I say, I basically ran out of money to make it work properly. So perhaps I'll go back and look at that again, because I got some way of the way there. The other problem is, of course, I'd need to share my code, and my code is just so awful. I'd be ashamed to share it.
I know what you mean. You when you're tweaking and messing about with stuff like that, you just build stuff onto stuff, and then you think, perhaps that wasn't the best way. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it does. You know what? If I could spend some time and refactor it, then maybe I will share it, because right now the code is so horrible. I'd put it up there and people just laugh at me, I think.
Yeah, that's I know that feeling. I've tinkered around with stuff in the past, and you think, I'm not sharing this. No one deserves to, no one needs this putting up on them. Yeah. Excellent. Well, we should be back same time, same place next week. I'll have a roundup from Simfest, and I'll have some my second video of the Surface Go up by then, and this is what my device for Simfest. This is what I'll be using. Although hopefully I'll be more hands-on and playing than doing any blogging while I'm there. But anyway, that'll be next week. So Richard, where can we find you?
Mainly on Blue Sky and Mastodon.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, and I'll just include the links. I'll find them. Garry, where can I find you? I'm
at Garry WMA virtually everywhere.
Yeah, and I keep trying with the other platforms. I use X a bit. As I mentioned last week, I've got my Power Automate to do auto blogging to Twitter now, or X. So they may have taken away the APIs, but Power Automate actually has helped me get around that. But that was only really for teaching myself Power Automate desktop. But yeah, it works. So I occasionally still use that, but I just can't train my brain now to use others. I've kind of given up really with the social platforms. I've given up Facebook a long time ago. So yeah, there's less for me to do on there nowadays. But all links are on the thislifestyle.com, plus the music stuff and everything else. So we'll be back same time next week, and we'll see you then.
All right, take care.
Cheerio.